حر يعني حرمت عليكم أمهاتكم وبناتكم وأخواتكم وعماتكم وخالاتكم وبنات الأخ وبنات الأخت وأمهاتكم التي أرضعنكم وأخواتكم من الرضاعة وأمهات نسائكم وربائبكم التي في حجوركم من نسائكم التي دخلتم بهن، إن لم تكونوا دخلتم بهن فلا جناح عليكم، وحلائل أبنائكم الذين من أصلابكم، وأن تجمعوا بين الأختين إلا ما قد سلف إن الله كان غفورا رحيما. These are the ones that are يعني محرمات. I think all of them actually. All of them are, no, some of them are because of the marriage, but most of them are because of the blood relationship. Yeah. So this is verse 23. And the books say that these also were forbidden in Jahiliyyah. So that's Quran just sanctioned something that was already there. Yeah. So do not marry women that your fathers married. This one was not in Jahiliyyah, was not before Islam. I mean, they used to do it. Marry a woman whose their father married before and the father died or they were divorced. But it was done before Islam, but was detested. Yeah. It was not something that the society accepts, but it was done. Yeah. And there is one more that was done also, and these are Islam came and ruled them out. You are forbidden to take as wives your mothers, daughters, sisters, paternal and maternal aunts, and of course, as I said last time, it goes up and down. So anything that is forbidden, any category that is forbidden, their parents are forbidden, and their children and offspring are forbidden also. Not any category, no, but because of course aunts, person is allowed to marry their daughters. Yeah. The daughters of brothers and daughters of sisters, that's the one that goes all the way down and up. Yani. Mothers, daughters, that's so grandmothers and granddaughters, etc. Your milk mothers and milk sisters, your wives' mothers, the step daughters in your care, those born of women with whom you have consummated marriage. If you have not consummated the marriage, then you will not be blamed. Wives of your begotten sons, وحلائل أبنائكم الذين من أصلابكم وربائبكم ربائبكم التي في حجوركم من نسائكم التي دخلتم بهن. إذن wives of your begotten sons, يعني the children of your son, two sisters simultaneously. So that's the category that was not before Islam was practiced, and Islam was practiced, even though it was not really something accepted much, but it was practiced, which is to have married two sisters at the same time. And subhanAllah, Islam amazingly, because we know this situation creates some friction, and Islam did not want to make it, put those two sisters in tough situations. And then rather than strengthening that original relationship, we end up, affecting it in a negative way. Women already married other than your slaves. Now this is the new one. With the exception of what is past, Allah is most forgiving and merciful. So that's what we saw last time. Now today, add another category, وَالْمُحْصَنَاتُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ. These are the married women, of course, married women. إِلَّا مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. How Quran condensed so many things in a short. Women already married, you cannot marry them, obviously, other than your slaves. And we're going to talk about this. Allah has ordained all this for you. As you can see, every time there is tashri'ah, you find something like this. فريضة, كتاب الله عليكم. That to make it easier on Muslims to accept these rules always, that this is not, this coming from Allah. And also in Surah An-Nisa, and probably in all the Quran, the most common names that were mentioned of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will double check this, but I'm very positive, yani, is the Alim and Hakim, especially in the context of the Sharia. Just you also more comfortable that Hakim, Alim and Hakim. So Allah is all-knowing and all-wise. Again, to make you also make it easier for you to accept. Yani these rules, one, they're coming from Allah, Kitab Allahi alaykum, Farida, etc. And then, and Allah who is the all-knowing and the all-wise, Al-Alim, Al-Hakim. And you can see it in Surah An-Nisa repeatedly. This in Mirath, Inna Allah kana aliman hakima. And here, Inna Allah kana aliman hakima. And then you find also Ghafur Rahim. Even though you may be surprised, because these are rules that are making, either they're prescribing something on you, or they're restricting your freedom, making something haram. So you may say that's a burden, that's tough. And Quran says no, it's the other way around. Inna Allah kana aliman hakima. That's Inna Allah kana ghafura rahima. That's it's in you. Actually, Allah is making it easier on you with these rules. And if you compare life according to the rules of Islam and life violating the rules of Islam, you can tell. You can see the huge difference. I mean, this is really when you find true happiness and the sakina, and so you'll be surprised to see Ghafur Rahim in this context. And then Yuridullah an yukhaffif ankum, later on, Allah is trying to make it easier on you, because the first thing that comes to your mind is not this. It's not that Allah is trying, it's basically, I want to do what I like. Why should I limit myself and restrain, and why should I add this to my life? And then Quran keep telling us that this is Allah is trying to make your life happier and easier and lighter with these rules. And He is the Ghafur, the forgiving and merciful, and He is the Alim and Hakim. So Kitab Allahi alaykum. طيب, what is this milk yamin? يعني والمحصنات من النساء, of course, married women, women already married, other than your slave. Allah has ordained all this for you. Right, this slavery thing is something that we have to come and explain, yani, which is why this. I mean, again, Islam was revealed in a world where this slavery is a system. It's a system. It is social and economic system. And yes, Quran could have said from day one that just stop this. But that's not how Quran fixes things. Because this, I mean, you can do it or you can say it, but it's not going to happen. And that's why we say in alcohol or khamr, drinking, it was forbidden gradually. And we have seen countries that tried to do this with one decision from above. It did not work. Prohibition here did not work. In Libya, certain point in time, the government decided to forbid alcohol. People start making it at home, homemade, and some people were doing it in a dangerous way, and they died because of that. And the total mess, it did not happen. So Quran is very practical, comes with a real solution from the roots, but these solutions have to be gradual. Meanwhile, there is a situation that you have to deal with. I mean, Quran could ignore it but that's not the way Quran does it. Quran tackle real problem with real solution, with practical solution. So there used to be wars, and during those wars, there are prisoners of wars, prisoners of war. And the prisoners of war, some of them are women. And what should you do? I mean, it's the elephant in the room. We can keep it as a taboo and say, let's not talk about it. We should not do anything about it. But that's not going to solve the problem. There is a real problem here. There is society that has to be protected, and there is a human being who it's like, can you have that prisoner of war and keep them without eating or without drinking? We cannot do that. That would be cruel. Same thing. There is something that has to be taken care of, or etc. So came up with this solution, which is that those prisoners of war, the person they end up with, or that person, prison of war, that woman, the person they end up with, he can marry her if she's a Muslim. And of course, Islam, that's what Islam would encourage and would recommend, because there is Islamic letters and there is Islamic spirit. There is an Islamic spirit. But of course, if she is not Muslim, so what you do? I mean, if a man is not allowed to marry a non-Muslim woman, so there is this relationship. It's there is a sexual relationship with that particular man. I mean, you can say that's bad. Maybe why the Quran allow this to happen? Of course, what's the alternative? What's the alternative for having so many prisoners of war, or many prisoners of war? It will be just fornication and adultery in the society. Now, that's we're gonna have to choose. Sometimes it's you choose between the two evils. And so came up with this temporary solution, which is that a woman who ends up in a house of a person, that person can, after a while, have sexual relationship with that woman. And then we'll see later on that it's so close to marriage, and it has all the ingredients of marriage. But maybe in that society at that time was not easily to accept, but for wisdom that only Allah knows, had this situation, and that woman can marry. I mean, can be married by somebody else later on, or if she becomes Muslim, or if she have a child. There are so many ways, exits that Islam has created for people to come out of slavery. In addition to the charity part, recommendation that anything that any sin that you commit, it's always the first thing is kafara. It's to free a slave. So tackle this problem from different angles with temporary solutions and with mechanisms to start working to resolve this problem from the roots. وأحل لكم ما وراء ذلكم أن تبتغوا بأموالكم محصنين غير مسافحين. Of course, this is we're talking about other women are lawful to you so long as you seek them in marriage with gifts from your property, looking for wedlock rather than fornication. These two words, and I really strongly recommend that you really spend some time searching محصنين غير مسافحين. Allah, Islam built a whole system on these two words. محصنين غير مسافحين. The purpose of this, all of this, of the marriage, is protection for the two spouses, and the alternative for this is musafihin, which is those relationship in which sex becomes the goal. Subhanallah, muhsinina, that this is a relationship that has that higher noble cause, is protecting and satisfying the needs of a human being in a very decent way, in a very decent and sacred institution, as compared to musafihin. So muhsinin is so high, and musafihin, it's so low. And in one of them, the sexual relationship is a means or a tool that is fulfilled, and the need that is fulfilled in a very decent and dignified way, and with the love and affection, etc. And in another, and the other system is the goal, and it is done in something in a way that is so low. Yeah, that's like most. It's like animal or even worse. Yeah. فما استمتعتم به منهن فآتوهن أجورهن فريضة. يعني if you wish to enjoy women through marriage, خلاص احنا we established now the goal is marriage, not محصنين غير مسافحين. يعني keep these two words because these tells you the eloquence and balagha of Quran, how a whole system can be described in 2 words. This marriage is meant to be محصنين محصنين غير مسافحين. If you give them their dowry, this is obligatory, though if you should choose mutually after fulfilling this obligation to do otherwise with the dowry, you will not be blamed. SubhanAllah. And that's the nature, that's the, now it's a pattern in the Quran, and you know it. There is always bottom line and there is flexibility. There are 5 prayers and there are sunan. There is Ramadan and there are recommended or optional fasting. There is zakah and there is sadaqah. There is mahr, dowry, and then whatever you decide. I mean, the woman should want to accept, want to less, you want to give more. That's تراضي. That's يعني لا جناح عليكم فيما تراضيتم به من بعد الفريضة. إن الله كان عليما حكيما. This alim and hakim, I think again, it's the most common or frequently mentioned names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially in the context of rules. That either Ghafoor Rahim, because that's a mercy. I mean, can you imagine? Allah is prescribing on you duties and limiting or restraining you, and He's telling you that's a mercy. That's a mercy from Allah. And then from Allah, who is the all-knowing and all-wise. Yani, even if it did not click, you should always accept that you only had limited knowledge. Yes, you are encouraged to know, and Quran, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can just tell us do this, but Quran explains. That's for us to teach us this inquisitive mind and critical thinking and asking and why not, and be convinced, etc. So Quran explains why this is prescribed and why this is forbidden. But keep in mind always, even though you try to understand why, and Quran explains to you, but even if there is some lack of conviction or understanding from your side, remember that Allah is Alim Hakim and Ghafoor Rahim at the same time. And He loves you, loves the best for you. Allah wants you to be happy and wants you to be successful more than you want for your children. And He is the all-knowing and all-wise. Keep these 4 always in mind. He is the Ghafoor Rahim. Allah loves His human being, more people, more than a woman loves her child. And He is Al-Alim Al-Hakim. So فما استمتعتم منهن فآتوهن أجورهن فريضة ولا جناح عليكم فيما تراضيتم به من بعد الفريضة. He gets into that level of details. That's there is something that is duty prescribed, that's the dowry, and then after that, whatever you decide mutually. Nobody is forced, or there is no pressure, but woman can say, no, I'm okay with less than that. Man can give more. That's up to you. إن الله كان عليما حكيما. ومن لم يستطع منكم طولا أن ينكح المحصنات المؤمنات. Now, المحصنات here has a different meaning. محصنات means ahrar here, means the free woman, because محصنات was mentioned before as the married woman. That's why reading Quran without reflection has no, you don't get much out of it. Just imagine you just reading it. محصنات من النساء over there are forbidden, and here they are okay. من مستطع منكم طولا أن ينكح المحصنات المؤمنات. So it looks like some contradiction. No, it's not. محصنات المؤمنات here, المحصنات here means the free woman. If any of you does not have the means to marry a believing free woman, then marry a believing slave. So again, we're not going to go back to the slavery system. Anybody who understanding the spirit of Islam realize from day one, Islam abhors this system and want to demolish it. It just did it in a practical way rather than doing with a parachute, and then nothing is gonna happen. Some companions, when it comes to forbidding alcohol and khamr, some companions did not wait until the 4 stages. Some companions from day one, like Umar ibn Khattab, they say that when he heard the word وَمِن ثَمَرَاتِ النَّخِيلِ وَالْأَعْنَابِ تَتَّخِذُونَ سَكَرًا وَرِزْقًا حَسَنًا. He got it. This is in Surah An-Nahl, by the way. I think it's the first verse that was mentioned, I think even before the one that you cannot pray while you are drunk. This is Surah An-Nahl. ومن ثمرات, it's Surah An-Nahl, verse 67. ومن ثمرات النخيل والأعناب تتخذون منه سكرا ورزقا حسنا. Surah An-Nahl is Nahl, with what did it say, 64 something, 67. Yeah, from the fruits, listen to this, that tells you that this deen is not, Sahaba, they dealt with this deen in a different way. They were looking for the best and for the maximum and for the highest, and not for the bottom line or for the passing grade. This is the verse that clicked with some companions. From the fruits of the date palms and grapes, you take sweet juice and wholesome provision. Sucker is not wholesome. تتخذون منه. He just did not say haram, didn't say anything. That from these fruits you make 2 things. Something is good and something else. Of course, some companions say, okay, there's something else, and there is question about it. There is a doubt. That's the same thing. This slavery thing system was demolished. So meanwhile, should be a solution. So you recommended to marry free women. You can't, you marry a believing slave. فَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ مِنْ فَتَيَاتِكُمْ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ. I'm going to finish this because it's so eloquent, this Quran, and so detailed, and even the nuances, some words. ومن لم يستطع منكم فمما ملكت أيمانكم من فتياتكم المؤمنات. These are the prisoners of war. These are the slave. And look at the Quran, what they call them. Your then marry a believing slave. No, I did not translate it properly. من فتياتكم, from your daughters or from your girls. And so even this woman is still, like a slave because it was prisoner of war, etc. But Quran is telling them that that's part of the family now. So you can go and marry that woman, and then comes and say, فَانْكِحُنَّ بِإِذْنِ أَهْلِهِنَّ. The person with whom that's prisoner of war is living, the Quran calls them her family. تَنْكِحُنَّ بِإِذْنِ أَهْلِ, not her master, not بِإِذْنِ سَيِّدِ أَسْيَادِهِنَّ, بِإِذْنِ أَهْلِهِنَّ. And it is really so and he's so decent, and Allah knows best the depth of your faith. You are all parts of the same family. Oh, so the translation continued there. You are all part of the same family. So marry them with their people's consent, actually with their family's consent, and their proper dowry. So, subhanallah, woman is a slave. Quran say fatayatikum. If you can mute everybody, please. Fatayatikum mu'minat. So they are your girls, yani, of the community. Because Quran is addressing the community, yani. فتياتكم مؤمنات, and then فانكحون بإذن أهلهن. So this is not a master, that's her family. And then آتوهن أجورهن, give them their dowry. It's not because she's a slave or she's helpless or etc. that you're gonna abuse. Yani, look at these three things. فتياتكم, that's their status. To tell you, if you understand the spirit of the deen, tells you that this system, Quran did not like it from day one, understand, and wanted to demolish, except that it tried to do it in a surgical way, or in a way that will tackle it from the roots rather than from the surface. So call them fatayatikum, your girls, and not their master, their family. So you go and ask for that woman from their families, and then give them their dowry. And so awesome, yeah. And then محصنات غير مسافحات ولا متخذات أخدان. Same rules, same purpose, same goal. It's not because she's a slave or she was a slave. It's the same everything, with a dowry and for a higher purpose. محصنات غير مسافحات ولا متخذات أخدان. With the gifts from your property, looking for wedlock rather than fornication. Same exactly as the free woman. And you will see in a minute how this deen is so fair, yani, and so just, yani, and so humane. Yani. First of all, again, fatayatikum, your girls, and even milk al-yamin, it's not like the abid or the slave, etc. It's, and then bi'idni ahlihinna. And I can see even some recommendations here that to do this quickly and not to go for the first solution. Yani. It's like if a woman ends up as a prisoner of war, when you just consider her like your daughter and find her, arrange for her to marry. Yani. And from what I understand the deen, I see this is the better choice, and the other one was like just a solution for to avoid something that is much worse. يعني. محصنات غير مسافحات ولا متخذات أخدان. And if you have a mission-driven community of believers, this is what will happen. That any prisoners of war will end up being married rather than having to have that temporary solutions just to avoid a bigger problem. And here comes the beauty of this, and in how humane and how fair it is. I mean, a slave woman or a person prisoner of war, she's not in her original society. Nobody knows her. There is no social pressure. There are no like relatives and people who know her that will help her restraining herself. That applies to men and women, by the way. Yeah. And imagine most of us, or many of us, who migrated to this country. Compare when you were living in your hometown and everybody knows you, how you were much more restraining yourself and probably more careful than when you find yourself here, or even in your original country, when you go from the town or the village or the city in which you're living to the capital and nobody knows you, restraining yourself is harder. There's no question about it. Yeah. So it is harder for this slave woman, or for this woman who is not in her يعني original يعني society environment to restrain herself. Punishment is half of the punishment of free women. In most other systems in history, the punishment of slave is double, is greater than the punishment of the free person. This is unique in Islam, that because these people don't have the mechanisms, all the mechanisms to restrain themselves, and the pressure or the social pressure that comes from a lot of people knowing you, your neighbors and your relatives and your colleagues, etc. You are in society, nobody knows you, nobody knows who you are, and you have less, your ability to restrain yourself is less, so the penalty is half. فإذا أحصن فإن آتينا بفاحشة فعليهن نصف ما على المحصنات من العذاب. يعني this piece and the other piece that we're going to come to it maybe next time inshallah, it's the Jew who was unfairly يعني ruled against, and some Muslims even testified, يعني gave false testimony against him, and Quran came and gave him, exonerated him completely. This piece, that a slave or a person who is not in their normal, natural, original environment, if they make the same mistake as the free women, if I leave this blank and they tell you fill in the blanks, in every system in history, the penalty will be double or triple or much worse, and comes only in Islam, and then says no, it has فإذا أحصنا فإن أتينا بفاحشة فعليهن نصف ما, if they commit, so make them married women, not adulteresses or lovers. That tells you that this is not something, again, this is not something that Islam is accepting or recommending. And I mean, the first scenario that we talked about, but it was just to avoid a bigger problem. If they commit adultery, when they are married, their punishment will be half of the free woman. That's it's amazing. فَنَأْتَيْنَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ فَإِذَا أَحْصَنَّ فَنَأْتَيْنَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ فَعَلَيْهِنَّ نِصْفُ مَا عَلَى الْمُحْصَنَاتِ مِنَ الْعَذَابِ. And then ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ خَشِيَ الْعَنَةَ مِنْكُمْ وَأَنْ تَصْبِرُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Still, Quran is recommending to marry free women. That's because Quran wants all women to be free. I mean, doesn't want this problem to continue. So ذلك لمن خشي العنة منكم, only those of you who fear that they will sin should marry slaves. See, it's always these things that nowadays we may not like them, or they don't seem to be very acceptable. Islam always says that these are meant to prevent a bigger problem, or something that is much worse. So only those of you who fear that they will sin should marry slaves. It is better for you to practice self-restraint. Allah is most forgiving and merciful. So this is for the, I mean, if you can just keep, because the normal system for Islam is all women are free and people are married free women, etc. But we have a situation that we deal with. So this is what you do it. Meanwhile, while this problem is being solved and demolished completely. And then, subhanAllah, we have like three verses in which Allah, Quran, is telling us why all these rules. Why Allah will tell you do this and refrain from doing this. 1. يريد الله ليبين لكم ويهديكم سنن الذين من قبلكم. 2. ويتوب عليكم والله عليم حكيم. والله يريد أن يتوب عليكم ويريد الذين يتبعون الشهوات أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما. يريد الله أن يخفف عنكم وخلق الإنسان ضعيفا. Subhanallah, يعني if you are wondering why these rules, because human naturally we want to do as we wish. We don't want limitations, we don't want restrictions, we don't want obligations. We want to do as we like. And then here Allah subhanahu explains that. So if ever you had that in mind, Allah is telling us, Allah is most forgiving and merciful. He wishes to make his laws clear to you. يعني والله غفور رحيم. Yeah, again, between غفور رحيم and عليم حكيم, most of تشريع, غفور رحيم or any other similar names of mercy, or عليم حكيم, which is the knowledge and the wisdom. So these are the reasons. These are why you have these rules. He wishes to make his laws clear to you and guide you to the righteous ways of those who went before you. Basically, is telling you to avoid things that spoiled or destroyed other nations before, and guide you to the ways that of nations that succeeded, of people who succeeded and thrived. Yeah. Guide you to the righteous ways of those who went before you. He wishes to turn towards you in mercy. And Allah is giving you a chance. I want يتوب عليكم, wants you to go to uplift you, wants you to in mercy. He is all-knowing, all-wise. He wishes to turn towards you, but those who follow their lusts want you to go far astray. There are two systems. You want to do as Allah guides you, or you want to do as you wish. There are people, the other people says that, or the other system, or the other structures or whatever, are meant to basically create that chaotic relationship, especially between man and woman. It just no guidance, no limitation, no restriction, etc. الذين يتبعون الشهوات أن تميلوا ميلا عظيما. And this was repeated in the Quran. There is divine guidance and there is something else, which is do as you like and follow anybody who tells you what to do. And there is the divine guidance. And then the amazing word that I alluded to before, that this Allah is Allah wishes to lighten your burden. And that's something that really surprising. Again, man was created weak. That's not what comes to your mind when you read obligations and limitations or restrictions. It comes to your mind that this is a burden, and you have to do this, and they cannot do that. And yes, and here Allah says He wants to lighten your burden. That's better for you. That's a better life for you. This is easier on you. Yeah, you will be happy. You will be someone who is have that peace of mind and tranquility. Yes, the alternative looks very tempting, but you're going to be suffering there. You as individuals and as a family and as a community, and you're going to be suffering there, even though it looks very tempting. But in this system, I'm lightening your burden. This is the way you're looking for happiness, and do it this way. And who is telling us this? Allah Al-Alim Al-Hakim. And He's telling us that He made those rules because we are weak. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. If He did not make those rules, maybe we'll be tempted to do what is harmful for us in this life and in the hereafter. Because you are weak, because you can be carried away, or you can be go astray, Allah is guiding you and giving you this system that will lighten your burden. So lightening your burden here was really, for me, it's not what you expect. It's not what you expect, that after a list of rules, of do's and don'ts, comes mercy, forgiving, and then lighten your burden, and Allah want to turn towards you in mercy. We're going to stop here because now we're moving from family to the society. Transaction, interaction, again, like Quran, working on the family, goes to work on the bigger circle, and then comes back to work on the individual. And that's how it keeps going between the three. Working on individuals, working on the building block, the family, working on the community and society at large, and even international relationship, as we will see. we'll stop here, inshallah, and let me know if you have any questions or comments.
I have a question. Actually, from the beginning of the lecture, you mentioned how the main ideas or our understanding of Quran has been changed, and that caused a lot of troubles for Muslims. And that's very clear to somebody, to lots of people actually, but other people don't maybe, or they don't want to admit to this fact. But it looks like if you look at it through a glass, imagine Quran is behind a glass, and there is, when it's clear, you see what Quran wants from you. But when it looks like through history, we have a lot of dust, and somebody maybe painted the glass or put another layer of glass and another layer and another layer. Now, when you look at Quran, you see something different. I mean, look at Islam. There is different picture than what Quran wanted. I mean, what's in the Quran. That's why we have all these troubles, or we have this takhalluf or backwardness, or all these problems. For the idea of slaves or milk al-yamin, if you look at the ayat in the Quran, as you mentioned, it's actually, if we just stick to it, maybe no problem would be happened in the history. But if you look at the Suq al-Nikhasa, they go to a war and they bring the woman and they put them in a market for sale, and people will start looking at them as they are
Right, or property.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I just want to mention.
And I mentioned in this last Jumu'ah, if anyone was not there, I really recommend that you try to listen to it. I mentioned that this did not happen by coincidence. The mutilation and of Islam did not happen by coincidence. First of all, of course, we know the first transition that happened for a reason that we can't really figure out yet, which is the transition from the civil war, basically. They call the Fitna Kubra, the civil war that happened among Muslims. And that's my explanation was for it from, a while ago. I kept saying that there are logic reasons for this. This is a small society that was relying a lot on people who know each other and people with a very high level of faith and self-restraint, etc., and trust and everything, and is led by very exceptional personality of Umar ibn Khattab. So when they grow to become an empire, the weaknesses and the deficiencies were covered by this. So when Umar ibn Khattab died, and you don't get a leader like Umar ibn Khattab every other day, and then when the growth, the explosive growth was beyond the capacity of mentorship and training that used to be there before. There was a mechanism before when somebody, because before there used to be one individual or few or even one tribe that comes to Islam, and they can be assigned to individuals who will mentor them and bring them up to speed and integrate them in the community. But in this case now, you inherited the Roman and the Persian Empire in the span of 1 week, because the Qadisiyah and the Yarmouk, I think they were 1 week apart. So you inherited two major superpowers of the world. There is, you have no administrative and no institutional capacity and no mentorship capacity to absorb that. And so that's where the balance was really, so, and that led to a string of problems. One of them was the transition from leadership by consent and consultation. And you can see all the elements of democratic system, by the way, in the Khilafah Rashida. in those in the first years after the death of Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because leaders were chosen by consent, and there was accountability, and there was total transparency. There was checks and balances. Everything it was there. It just was not institutionalized. But there is no. I mean, even the Khalifa at that time, the leader, could not spend a penny without accountability and behind the back of people. So transition to the dynasty, and this is where things start. The collapse started. Why? Because this dynasty system, it's not in their. I mean, you have an absolute power, absolute ruler. Someone who rules has absolute power, and power will be passed on to his son. طبعا this system will not want to keep that sense of mission in Islam, or maqasid, or justice, or no. So that part of Islam was, has faded by design, and that's it's an automatic thing. I mean, it's automatic implication. There is a new system of governance that is not compatible with the original understanding of Islam that transform individuals and turn them into people with a purpose in life. And no. So let's remove all of this, or take it, or neglect it, put it on the side, and instead let's blow out of proportion the rituals, sha'ir, fiqh al-ibadat, fiqh al-tahar, just write books and do research on how to perform wudu, and how to perform ghusl, and how to do this, and the hijab of women, and the beard of the man, and etc. Because that will not do anything for those rulers. So spend all the time on this. And they were even sponsoring this. There was a clergy that was sponsored by these rulers. So that's where it started, But it went all the way until that original Islam, the essence of Islam, faded completely. And Islam becomes to be defined like this. So it is Islam, it's pray five times, you fast Ramadan, you don't do that, and you're fine. That's it. That's not the Islam that was presented by Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I mean, all of this were not mentioned in the beginning. Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam did not tell people any of these things before. I mean, Islam in the beginning came to ask people to commit to a mission and commit to the goals of Islam. So there was a major, mutilation, or major change, transformation of an Islam, while keeping the appearance. They kept the appearance. It's like, we have a store and it has like a facade. So they kept the facade, but they changed everything inside the store. Or the store is empty now, it has nothing in. So Islam, the essence of Islam is not there anymore, but they kept the same facade. So we still pray the same way and fast the same way, etc. But we don't see that product of the original Islam, we don't see it. And then I keep saying that Quran is not only a great book of guidance, and studying it is not just a duty for a Muslim. It's really, it's something that you will enjoy. I mean, it's very eloquent book, It's extremely eloquent book. Has really a lot of great touches,
Of course, that's true. I was listening to a researcher. He has actually his PhD in Maqasid. His name is Iyad Abu Rabia. I just found him recently. And he was talking about, he's specialized in Maqasid, and he tackled these kind of hard issues. When you say Islam salih li kulli zaman wa makan, it's good for any time and any place. Well, he said he doesn't agree on this, because if you look at Abid or Ima, or this slavery issue, it's not anymore. It's stopped. There is no, so you cannot say we have slaves today. Slaves is gone. That's just an issue that's not anymore. So, I mean, you have to have some courage to say that. I don't know. What do you think?
Actually, I have a better, I think I have a better statement for that, which is, yes, Islam is valid for all places and all times, but not every piece of it or every verse of it is valid for all times and all places. And I use the metaphor of the pharmacy, that Islam has, it's like a pharmacy. It has all the medicine and the ingredients of all the medicine that pharmacists can use to make medicine. But that doesn't mean that every medicine is suitable for every individual. A medicine that can cure individual and save an individual can kill another individual. The same medicine can save an individual with a certain dose, and if with a higher dose can kill that individual. Yeah. So yes, it is valid for all times and all places, and because it is valid for all times and all places, it came so flexible that it doesn't mean that you can take any verse and apply it in any context, because that's how people understood it. Unfortunately, they understood that statement. The statement is right. It's the application of it was wrong. People understood that statement, that because Islam is valid for all times and all places, and they can open the Quran and find a verse of qital or something, and then they go and apply. No. That's not what it means. It's like basically a pharmacist picking a random medicine, randomly from the pharmacy and giving it to a patient like that. That's what we're doing. No, that's not what it means. So that's why there are a lot of verses in Quran that are not applicable in many contexts. They're just not applicable. And there are so many verses about qital, for example, fighting in Islam. There is not, Islam agrees with the international definition of the just war, which is then self-defense. So unless you are, your land is occupied or you are being attacked and you're defending yourself, there is no war, there is no fighting.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples where applying the literal meaning, المعنى الحرفي, stick to the and go to, okay, we have to apply it. And in that case, go to the ayah where it says وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُم مَّا اسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ وَمِن رِّبَاطِ الْخَيْلِ. So you have to use horses these days if you stick to the literal meaning. Yeah. I was discussing, I was with little kids the other day, not grown-up kids, and we were talking about if you are in a sea, if you go just in the water and cover yourself with water, that's a wudu. And the guy said, no, it has to be step by step. So I don't know. Sometimes people go to the literal meaning and they forget the main purpose. Because when wudu came to an area where it's dry and there's no water, of course you have to do it slowly and step by step, and that would be enough to do the cleaning and to preparation for salah. But if you are in a sea or a river, you don't have to do. You can just jump if you know. I don't know how. If I jump, I will stay inside, but others can jump and come back. So,
it's really. It's that balance between maqasid and thawabit, what are, or between, as you said, between the literal meaning and the spirit and the essence of this deen. It's that balance that we lost it at certain point in time, and we are yet to be able to strike it again. So we have both extremes. We have people who stick to the literal meaning, and those who say, let's put everything aside and try to come up with an alternative, even though we don't. Always the extreme options are the easier. Because that rather than bothering yourself of thinking and deep thinking, etc., just go for the easy solution. But that's not the right way. The right way is, how can we achieve the goals of Islam while respecting the constant, or the things that are not that are fixed in Quran. There are things that are fixed, but there are goals. As long they are consistent, both that we are achieving goals and we're sticking to the things that are fixed, Go for it. That's no problem. How about if there is a contradiction? If there is an issue between the text and the maslaha, or the greater good. And for the companions, it was very clear. And by the way, nowadays, there are mainstream scholars who have the courage to say it. And some of them are alive, some of them passed away, had the courage to say that if the text, nas, and the maslaha, the greater good, they are not consistent, or they contradict one another, تقدم المصلحة على النص. There are people that the greater good comes first. There are people who had, even though this is a taboo among Muslims, especially among practicing Muslims and etc., that's something that, but there are people who had the courage to say it. And some of them, they went back to Umar al-Khattab mainly, and even Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, that they took some decisions that were not in accordance with some texts. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq fought the people who refused to pay zakah. Most of the companions were against him based on hadith. And he took that political decision based on maslahah, that if he allows that to happen, the state will disintegrate in no time. And the deen will be total mess. Basically cherry picking becomes. So Umar ibn Khattab, actually it's even more than that. Umar ibn Khattab stopped the penalty for stealing during the famine. He stopped paying مؤلفة قلوبهم, even though there is a text. There used to be a part of the spoils of the war. Rasul used to pay, and Abu Bakr Siddiq, by the way, both used to pay some leaders of tribes who are not Muslims, and they want basically to appease them and prevent them from joining enemies. It's like some sort of arrangement. So and Quran, there it's إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين, and then مؤلفة قلوبهم. And Umar al-Khattab, when these people came to take what they used to take, he said, no, I'm not giving you, because basically all your tribe now are Muslims, so you don't represent anything anymore. So he used his intellect, and he used maslaha, and he did not stick to the letter meaning, and dividing, also splitting, distributing the spoils of the war. It used to be 80% goes to the fighters, 20% goes to the treasure of the state. And Umar al-Khattab said, I'm not going to continue with that. That's what Rasul ﷺ did. That's what Quran says. And Umar al-Khattab say, when they get the empire, the Persian Empire, yes, I'm not going to distribute the empire among the soldiers. So he turned into salaries. And he kept those huge wealth. You're talking about jewelry. Tons of jewelry. And I'm not going to be distributing it among the fighters. It's not going to happen.
I believe there is questions in the chat, in the text.
I don't see it. Where is it?
In the chat.
Where does it say? What does it say? Where is it? How do you go there? Why there is no one tafsir and it's kept open for multiple tafsirs? And yes, why God didn't give us the tafsir so nobody will manipulate with that? What is the criteria we differentiate a good tafsir from a bad one? So all of this is about the tafsir. Now, of course, Quran, Allah will not send us one tafsir because for the same reason, this is a fixed guidance that is meant to guide evolving life. So there can't be no one tafsir. And if the Quran itself came flexible, you want Allah to restrict it with one interpretation that can be suitable at that time and then not be suitable if time changes, or with one interpretation that will mention things that those people do not know yet. That imagine explanation to the people in the Arabian Peninsula, talking to them about the fruits and technology and things that they have never heard about it before. Yeah. So no, it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate either way. It's not appropriate to have something that is suitable for that time and then become obsolete with time. And it's not appropriate that to talk about things that did not happen yet to people who don't know it. Yani. So it is by design, because of that reason, because Quran is fixed and life is evolving, and Allah promised to preserve the source of guidance and gave us the responsibility to interpret it in a suitable way in a different context. So that's by design that we have a duty and obligation to contextualize the Quran, the fixed Quran, so that it can keep up and guide and inform a life that is evolving all the time. Actually, for what is good tafsir and etc., I always recommend that you start first taking Quran as a course and taking it as a textbook. So like do what you do in what this good student will do. What good student will do these days is they start by reading the text, they're trying to understand it, search the meaning of the words, and then go online and start search. You may ask for guidance for someone. You can have someone to mentor you or to guide you the first steps. You may find some sources. You can have somebody to help you checking them out. Brother so-and-so, sister, I found this YouTube channel or this website or this scholar who is doing tafsir of the Quran. I listened to him and I liked it. What do you think? Is it something that, can you help me? Is this something that you recommend that I establish as my one of my references, or it is something that can confuse me? This will not take a long time before you start having a system. Like any good student will have like their textbook and will have like few sources. They will check a few extra sources. They will check to understand. So before you know it, in no time, you will have books, even though books now is not like the most convenient way, but in no time you will have some short list of references that is helping you understanding, but that's not the substitute for doing the effort yourself and searching the meaning of the word and trying to do some reflections on like every good student will do, not just to memorize. Yeah. So please do that. I'm willing to help. If you find a source or you find something that you want me to check it for you, if you are doing this on your own and you come across a verse that you wanted to be explained, please bring it to the session. So yeah, something like this.
جزاك الله كل خير دكتور سيل. ان شاء الله we see you next Sunday.
ان شاء الله بحول الله.
السلام عليكم.
السلام ورحمة الله.